A British Army general has threatened to incinerate 30 Russian cities. The response from Russian Defense Minister Andrey Belousov forced NATO generals to clutch their heads in disbelief. His reply shocked the entire world with its cold, calculated severity. He warned that Russia's response would be instantaneous, asymmetric, and final. NATO has never faced such a rebuff or counter threat in the entire history of the alliance. In this report, we will examine everything in detail. Today we will analyze why NATO generals, from American Ben Hodges to senior British commanders, have moved to openly threatening the destruction of Russian cities, including Kaliningrad. We will find out what the map published by the Kremlin means, showing NATO facilities that are under constant surveillance by Russian missile systems. And we will discover why the Oreshnik strike on Lviv on January 3rd forced Europe to realize that no air defense system can protect them from Russian hypersonic missiles, capable of reaching Berlin, Paris, and London within minutes. Watch to the end to understand how Security Council Secretary Nikolai Patrushev's statement about turning aggressors into fire and ash changes the balance of nuclear deterrence, and why those who thought they could hide on the British Isles are gravely mistaken. On January 17, 2026, a statement was made that became a turning point in the escalation of tensions between Russia and NATO, which have reached a critical level. At a closed international security forum, the location of which was not disclosed for confidentiality reasons, a British general holding a high-ranking position in the command structure of the UK Armed Forces delivered a speech. According to eyewitnesses present at the event, the general spoke with an unmistakable threat in his voice, leaving no room for misinterpretation. He emphasized that London possesses both the technical means and the political resolve to launch a preemptive strike on Russian territory. The general declared the hypothetical possibility of incinerating up to 30 key Russian cities if Moscow does not stop what Western analysts call aggressive foreign policy and geopolitical ambitions that threaten the security of the European continent. This was not mere rhetoric. It was a direct warning about readiness to use strategic weapons of mass destruction against Russia's largest population centers. Among the cities mentioned were Moscow, St. Petersburg, Kazan, Yekaterinburg, Novosibirsk, and other million-plus cities where tens of millions of civilians live, 30 cities. These are not military facilities, not missile bases, not command posts. These are residential neighborhoods, schools, hospitals, and infrastructure that sustain the life of a vast nation. The British general's statement was an outright threat of genocide, cloaked in the language of preemptive strike and national security. What makes this even more shocking is that this threat did not come from a fringe politician or radical journalist, but from a senior military official representing one of the world's leading nuclear powers and a permanent member of the UN Security Council. This means that in Western military circles, scenarios of massive strikes on Russian cities are being seriously discussed, not as retaliation for Russian aggression, but preemptively. That is, striking first before Russia takes any actions that the West might consider threatening. The reaction from the Russian leadership followed immediately, demonstrating that Moscow takes these threats extremely seriously and is ready to respond with appropriate measures. Russian Defense Minister Andrey Belousov delivered an emergency address broadcast live on all state television channels and published on official ministry platforms. His words landed like an icy shower on the British establishment and NATO military leadership, dreaming of a quick victory over Russia at minimal cost. Belousov spoke calmly, without emotion or bluster, simply stating facts that anyone planning aggression against Russia must understand. He said that Russia threatens no one and has never started wars first. This, he stressed, is a historical fact confirmed by centuries of Russian history. But if anyone seriously believes they can destroy Russian cities with impunity, they must know that the response will be immediate, asymmetric, and final, leaving the aggressor no chance of victory or even survival. Russia has never started wars, he said, but it has always finished them on its own terms. Whether it was the defeat of Napoleon, who marched all the way to Moscow, or the destruction of Hitler's war machine that sought to enslave the Russian people, any attack on Russian cities will leave no decision-making centers, no command posts, and no capitals from which threats to Russia's existence originated. Belousov delivered these words with a cold confidence more frightening than any emotional outburst. This statement means that Russia will not play by the rules of limited war that the West is trying to impose. NATO seems to believe it can strike Russian cities and then hide safely behind oceans and islands. But an asymmetric response in military terms means using methods and weapons the enemy does not expect, and against which it has no effective defense. If Britain attempts to destroy 30 Russian cities, Russia will not respond by destroying 30 British cities. Instead, it will eliminate every center from which the threat originates, including London, Washington, Brussels, and any NATO command post coordinating actions against Russia, regardless of their location. A final response means this will not be a warning or a show of force. It will be the complete destruction of the aggressor's military potential, depriving them of any ability to continue hostilities. Soon after, the Kremlin published a map showing NATO facilities that, according to officials, are under constant surveillance by Russian intelligence and strike systems. This map shocked Western military planners because it marked not only obvious targets such as bases and missile positions, but also government buildings, residences of political leaders, underground strategic aviation bunkers, bomber airfields, nuclear submarine ports, and communication hubs. Moscow effectively demonstrated that it knows the location of every critical NATO facility and can strike them at any moment using hypersonic missiles for which there is no defense. Officials stressed that publishing the map was not a threat, but a statement of fact. Moscow views the British general's words as blatant blackmail and a direct threat to national sovereignty. If Western militaries seriously plan preemptive strikes on Russian cities, Russia is obliged to keep all potential launch sites under constant targeting so it can destroy them before missiles are launched. But the British general is not alone. In recent months, several NATO commanders have moved toward openly threatening Russia. Former U.S. Army Europe commander Ben Hodges stated that if Russia attacked NATO, Kaliningrad would be destroyed in the first hours of conflict. This was not an abstract threat, but a concrete plan evidently developed within alliance headquarters. Kaliningrad, an isolated Russian enclave surrounded by NATO territory, is seen as easy prey that could be quickly captured or destroyed. Current U.S. Army Europe and Africa Commander General Christopher Donahue added even more detail. He stated that Kaliningrad could be wiped off the map in an unprecedentedly short time, thanks to new precision weapons and improved tactics. He essentially boasted about the ability to destroy a Russian region home to nearly 1 million civilians. In support of this harsh rhetoric, a British military representative, whose name is not widely known but who clearly coordinates statements with American colleagues, issued an even more aggressive threat. He expanded potential targets from Kaliningrad to 30 major Russian cities. He said that if Russia does not abandon what the West calls aggressive actions, meaning defending its national interests and refusing to submit to Western dictates, Britain is ready to incinerate up to 30 key Russian cities. This statement sparked outrage in the Kremlin, where it was seen as crossing a red line and direct preparation for aggression, requiring immediate preventive measures. Russia's Security Council Secretary Nikolai Patrushev responded swiftly. One of the key figures in Russian strategic decision-making, Patrushev spoke bluntly. He declared that anyone who touches Kaliningrad will be turned into fire and ash within minutes, before they can comprehend the scale of their fatal mistake. No one, he said, should test Russia's patience, especially regarding territorial integrity and national security. Patrushev made it clear that threats to Kaliningrad are threats to all of Russia and may require the use of the entire arsenal, including strategic nuclear weapons. Kaliningrad, he said, is not just a point on the map. It is Russia's outpost in the heart of Europe, a symbol of resilience and determination. The map, published by Russia's Ministry of Defense, sent shockwaves through NATO, forcing military and political leaders to realize their plans are well known in Moscow and that all potential targets are already under the sights of Russian missiles. After the Oreshnik hypersonic strike on Lviv on January 3, 2026, located near NATO borders, Europe finally understood that no air defense system could protect them from Russian retaliation. Oreshnik is a revolutionary hypersonic system capable of carrying conventional or nuclear warheads and striking targets thousands of kilometers away at speeds exceeding Mach 10, making interception virtually impossible. The strike demonstrated that Russian missiles can penetrate any defense and accurately hit targets far from Russian territory. This means Berlin, Paris, and London are within range and could be reached within minutes of a launch decision. British politicians and generals who believed they could hide on an island separated by the English Channel are gravely mistaken. Hypersonic missiles can reach London from Russia's western borders in approximately 10 to 15 minutes, leaving no time to evacuate governments, organize defense, or even decide on a counterstrike. Britain would be decapitated and paralyzed before it even realizes war has begun. The escalation of threats by NATO generals reflects deeper processes within the alliance. There is growing realization that previous strategies of containment through sanctions and proxy war in Ukraine have failed. Russia has withstood unprecedented pressure, adapted its economy, expanded military production, and demonstrated new weapons, systems against which the West is powerless. In this situation, NATO increasingly discusses direct conflict scenarios, hoping a massive preemptive strike on key targets, including cities, could break Russian resistance before Moscow deploys its full military potential. But these calculations are based on a fundamental misunderstanding of Russian doctrine and political will. Russia is not Iraq or Libya. It is the world's largest nuclear power with the most advanced strategic arsenal, including hypersonic systems, stealth submarines, and intercontinental missiles capable of striking anywhere on the planet. Any attempt to preemptively strike Russian cities will inevitably lead to retaliation that destroys all participants, regardless of location. Belousov's and Patrushev's statements are not empty threats, but warnings based on real capabilities and political will. The published NATO target map shows Russia is ready for any scenario and will not be caught off guard. Every command, post, base, and capital involved in aggression is already in missile databases and can be hit automatically even if central command is destroyed, thanks to the perimeter system, also known as dead hand. The world stands on the brink of catastrophe. Reckless statements by generals dreaming of easy victory may trigger a chain reaction leading to global nuclear war with no winners. The British general threatening 30 Russian cities either does not understand or deliberately ignores that such an attack would automatically destroy all NATO countries involved. Russia has made it clear the response will be asymmetric and final, leaving no chance for survival. The coming weeks will show whether NATO truly intends to push confrontation to open war or whether common sense prevails. For now, rhetoric escalates on both sides. Military machines are put on alert. Missiles are aimed at targets. The world watches in fear as the crisis may enter a hot phase at any moment. Threats to incinerate 30 Russian cities and Belousov's promise of asymmetric retaliation reflect a new reality where old deterrence rules no longer work, and the threshold for using strategic weapons dangerously lowers. American generals' statements about destroying Kaliningrad and Patrushev's warning of turning aggressors into ash show both sides are ready to go all the way. The NATO target map and Oreshnik demonstration are Moscow's final warning that Russia is not bluffing. Do NATO generals underestimate Russia's resolve? Is a preemptive strike real? How should Russia respond to prevent war? The future of humanity depends on realistic assessment of this situation. The world stands on the edge of nuclear catastrophe that can still be prevented by common sense and mutual respect.